Awesome. Well, thank you, Al, for that introduction. Let me simplify the introduction for you. I'm a farm kid from Illinois who's a Cubs fan, so that tells you everything you need to know about me. I'm dumb, I'm loyal, and I don't give up. And so that really is the essence of what I want to talk to you about today and the community college movement. We're the scrappers of the higher education industry. We talk a lot about, and I appreciated, Al, in your opening remarks, you talked about that stubbornness. And that's really what those of us in community college really believe in. And that with that stubbornness that believes that we can indeed make a change in our own lives and in the world around us, part of that is your theme of this month, and that's that hope. My most often question I've received in my few months here in Erie is, what made you choose to come to Erie? And I laugh when I hear that question, because at times it feels as if that question comes with a negative impact. It says, well, why would you come here? There's nothing. And having grown up in a town similar to Erie that struggled economically like Erie, lost most of the manufacturing plants, went away. All the big employers went away. The difference between Erie and my hometown is Erie hasn't lost hope. There's a group of people like you who believe we can and will do better. And that's all it takes. Margaret Mead said it better than anybody. A few stubborn people will change the world because they see no other option. So with that, I'd like to give you a very brief overview of, brief overview of what Erie County Community College is. So when we think about college, we often think about graduation, right? We think about getting that 4-year degree, going on out into the workforce. The community college is different. We do certainly do that, but we also train a lot of folks that go immediately into the workforce. So right into manufacturing, into healthcare, into IT. So the way I want to look at how we're going to find hope is I want to break it into kind of 4 categories. When we think about what Erie County Community College does in terms of hope, we certainly think about it in terms of hope for the student. Most people in America think about that. But community colleges, if we are going to be the community's college, we also need to think about how it serves local businesses, how it serves our community, and my personal, what has drawn me into this industry, the underserved. Let's look at those a little bit deeper. So if we think about this, here are 4 kind of guiding principles as we're forming the community college. And I'm going to go into these a little bit detail. There are a lot of words on the screen. Don't feel obligated to read them all. I did this. This was actually, I used this for a different presentation, but I want to kind of highlight it here. So we will be an economic driver in Erie County. Because we are indeed supported by state and local dollars, it's important that we recognize that while there's certainly a private good to the facet of being in higher education, we also have to recognize the public good, and that is that a more informed, a more educated workforce that can thrive and produce, when the tide rises, all boats float. That's the essence of this. So we will be providing training and service to those in-demand, high-paid jobs. We're also going to meet students through a compassionate and personalized instruction. One theme you may hear me say throughout this is there's often an ivory tower principle of higher education. That's not community colleges. Get yourself down from that tower and get down into the gutters, get onto the streets, figure out who these students are, understand what their challenges are. If we only want to use the model of higher education that's existed 2,500 years, we will only educate the wealthy that come from educated families. We're not going to make Erie County as strong as it can be if we only focus on that upper echelon. We're going to partner in everything we do. I think one of the challenges we had when economically things were better, everyone created their own systems. That's not going to exist anymore. We are all struggling for resources. We're all struggling trying to make this region thrive. And so the way we're going to do that is by partnering. And then finally, this last one we're going to talk a lot about the student, but let me show you how these strategic principles connect to who that hope is for. My apologies, every time my chat comes up, I have to re-click the screen. So you'll see when we think about the economic driver, that benefits businesses. When we meet students, that's about the student themselves. When we talk about partnering, that's how we'll become woven into the fiber of our community. And finally, that last, those underserved. And so I want to briefly look at each of these and share with you some high level of what Erie County Community College may look like in the next 5 to 10 years with that. So when we think about being an economic driver, again, I'm going to give you the quickest highlight. I'm happy to share this PowerPoint out if anybody'd like it. We're going to work with a lot of the local businesses and try to understand what are those jobs that are coming up? What are those equipment? How is that changing? How do we make sure that we're preparing students that can walk right into that job and they can make great livable wages? I mean, we're not talking just a good hourly wage. We're talking there's benefits, there's in some case retirement plans, there's access to healthcare. These are game changers for many of our poor. And as you all know, Erie County, we're one of the poorest counties in the nation. And I think a large part of that is because we haven't had a community college that allows folks to access training. One of the things community colleges do, and I've done my entire career, when businesses want to invest into a region, they often do their own homework before they'll even really contact that region. They're going to make sure the infrastructure is there, that you have access to get materials there, you have ability to get materials shipped where they need to be. Then typically they'll engage, and they'll either engage with a county organization, a city organization, a chamber of commerce, a business startup, whatever that local is. Most of the time, 75% of the answer to whether a company is going to invest or upscale within a community says, can you get me a qualified workforce? Workforce is a driver for economic development. So our job at the community college is to help with that. So we will sit at those tables, whether it's with our greater regional Erie Chamber, whether it's with the mayor, whether it's with the county executive, as we're trying to court businesses to come here. Erie County Community College will be at that table so we clearly understand what the business needs are, and we can pivot as quickly as possible to try to get that training in place so we can get those companies to invest here. Because again, when the company comes in and does well, our individual students will do well, their families will do well, their communities do well. We all benefit when we do that. So a couple other things. We think quite a bit about traditional education. The student graduates high school and comes on to a college campus. That's true in many cases, but the average age of an Erie County Community College student right now is 37 years old. What you see is different about our model of education than what you may be used to there in Erie County is we get a lot of times, students will come back after retooling a career, or they've raised their children, or you know what, they've worked in, let's say, the legal industry, and they say, I don't think this is for me, I want to go into healthcare. So then they'll come back. And that's really what we do. So we really serve all sorts of students. And we try to get students as much experience as possible in the jobs they're in. We know about 80% of the jobs that are going to exist in 2030 aren't invented yet. People have no idea what the jobs that are out there are. We don't even know them yet. And so it's really important that we introduce people to different types of businesses and industries so they can get a feel for what that is. What's that culture like? Can they see themselves thriving in that environment? So as much as we can get students into companies and businesses, we want to do that because it benefits everyone. So we also talk about how we're going to serve the student. I appreciated the stubborn comment, and I'm reminded of Aesop's fable about the man and his donkey who falls in the cistern. And the short of the story is he thinks he's going to have to let the donkey die because he can't get him out of the cistern, and starts to bury him alive because he doesn't have the courage to put him out of his misery. But the donkey is too stubborn to give up. And so every time that old man throws a shovelful of take a long time with a spoon, a shovelful of dirt, the donkey eventually shakes it off and raises himself out of that cistern. That's what we do. We will meet students where they are. We're going to recognize many of our students are first generation college students. They don't have any idea, this term I use a lot called how to college, right? And let me exemplify what how to college means. I'm a first generation college student who grew up on the wrong side of the tracks with an amazing family who encouraged and supported me all along. Many of our students don't have that second part of my story. I went to college, I got my first bill. I went to my mom and I said, great mom, how are we going to pay this? We didn't know. So we went to the local bank where we got our house loan and we got our car loans. And we sat down with our local banker, and Rod was his name. And I still remember this day, Rod smirking the whole time. And he says, guys, you don't come here. You've got to go back to that college and go to this office called financial aid. Even as something as simple as that, students who aren't exposed to this don't get that. We are so bureaucratic in higher education. We have to break down those barriers. Our students suffer from food insecurity, housing insecurity, transportation issues, childcare. If we can't solve those issues, I can't even focus on the cognitive. So we have to recognize that our students are incredibly vulnerable. And so to do that, we're going to meet them where they are. We're going to recognize that they come with a different set of experiences, a different set of cultural values, and a different level of fear. And we're going to work with them through that together. A couple other things here. I think I touched on this last one. We want every student to get experience in the workforce. We want to make sure we know that students need to know what their goal is. Students who come in and flounder are often the ones who say, well, I don't know what I want to do. So they take courses here, here, and here, and they end up in a 2-year college for 6 years with way too much debt. We need to do better by our students. Let's help them understand the importance of, look, get your degree, get your skill set. The jobs will change. You don't have to identify what you want to be when you grow up, because that's a myth. That 87% of people do not work in the field that they graduated from in college. So we need to stop emphasizing majors. Majors are outdated concept, especially when we know those majors aren't, those jobs that are connected to those majors are changing so rapidly right now. You'll see a couple other things here. Let me tell you practically, here's what this really means. We're gonna put people in there that help students all along in the process. Oftentimes it's fear, right? So in our classes, we're going to have success coaches that are literally in there. So separate from the teacher. And we found this during COVID. We put these success coaches in there, and all of a sudden, these students would feel comfortable reaching out to a success coach and say, hey, I got this bill from financial aid. It says something about a FAFSA, and I don't know what that means. They sometimes won't ask our faculty that. And if the faculty is the only touch point for a student, we're losing a student an opportunity to help them, right? So we're going to meet them everywhere we are. We're going to recognize those nuances, and we're going to help them kind of overcome those. We talked about this a little before, but I also want to recognize we'll also not only do the credit education, we're also going to do a lot of other types of education. Community colleges typically do your adult basic education or your GED training. We do English as a second language coursework. I came from a similar county to Erie County from Northern Illinois, northwestern suburbs of Illinois. We had over 80 languages represented in our ESL programming. So here we have trained, skilled laborers who come in, physicians, doctors, lawyers, carpenters who come in. And unfortunately, with the way the international education system is, we don't recognize their credentials. So they end up doing a menial level work. They have high level education. So often, if we can help overcome that language barrier, we can then get them back into higher education and bring that skill and experience they have into that. So those are the types of things that community colleges do for the student. But I also want to talk about what we're going to do within the community. First, we have to message this. So I'm thankful to you all to invite me here today to share at a highest level what a comprehensive community college is. Lots of folks don't know that and don't understand how we're going to be drastically different from the rest of our great and our fine higher education institutions here. You're going to see that we're going to be developing partnerships with our local high schools. We'll be offering dual credit. We know a student who gets any college credit while in high school stands an 87% chance of graduating with a certificate or a degree from college. I believe we have a moral and an ethical obligation to get every student in Erie County the opportunity for college credit while they're in high school. So I'm going to be working very closely with our high schools to do that. And now when I say that, sure, we're talking the prep schools. They're probably already doing it. In fact, I know they are. I'm going to be into Erie High. These are the students who probably most need to be able to see themselves that they can indeed be successful at college. And that's where we can make a huge difference. All right. So last point I want to talk about is the underserved, right? I think I share with you briefly. I am a graduate of a community college. I did well academically, and my teachers always kind of hinted that college would be a thing, but nobody I knew went to college. Nobody else from my neighborhood went to college, right? It's not the cool thing to do. It wasn't the popular thing to do. Go down to the Lower East Side. I think you'll see similar stories. Go to the western part of our county, the rural poor. I think you'll see similar stories. So we need to recognize that what the community college does, and let me tell you briefly about our demographics of our current students. 37% are students of color. Countywide, that number is about 12%. So 3 times, our saturation level is 3 times higher. Specifically, I believe it's 23% of our students are African-American or Black students, right? Over 80% of our students are 23 years old or higher, right? So we are certainly serving a much more diverse subset of students than the Gannons, the Mercyhurst, the Edinburghs. All of them play an important role. Please, please. And when I share the differences, I don't mean to place value with that. I say we are additive. We are adding on to that. But I want to talk a little bit about these core values that are going to drive who we are. When I talk about adaptability, that's a change. We are going to shift our programming to meet the needs of the community. As I get challenged to say, we need to add programming or classes in X or that, here's what I'm going to say. Okay, great. How does that benefit the community? How does that provide jobs? How does that help our economic area grow? Now, guys, I'm a theater major. That's a tough conversation for me. Everyone keeps saying, hey, Chris, are you going to add a theater program out there? Nope. The answer is no. There are no jobs right now in that industry. That doesn't mean I don't encourage students to study theater, but if they want to do that, go to one of our other partners here in town that have robust theater programs. As the community college, our job is going to be to help them get immediately into high-paying jobs and workforce opportunities. That's going to be something that's quite different than many others. We're going to be entrepreneurial in what we do. You know, one of the things higher ed doesn't do very well is we haven't followed business principles. I'll be quite honest. We just don't follow business principles. And here until the last decade or so, we have to say, what's the business plan for that? We have to recognize we are stewards of the students' financial investment as well as state funding, and right now through the gaming, local funding through the gaming. We have to recognize we're stewards from that and make sure we're making good choices and not duplicating resources. We're going to do all of this with an upbeat, can-do attitude. Our students have been beaten down most of their life. They see authority as not a partnering, but as someone who's going to hold them back. We have to change that, right? The other part I really want to talk about here is, guys, as an outsider in Erie County, we have some serious challenges. The racism is more palpable here than in any community I've lived. It is challenging. It is difficult. I continue to see resources go away from the poorer communities out to the communities where there is more wealth. That is a challenge that we all must face. And so as part of that, belongingness, which is the new buzzword for diversity, equity, inclusion, will be a core of what we do. You will see my staff is going to look like the students we serve. I need students to be able to see, I need some of those new Americans who are relocating here to see employees and say, wow, okay, if I do this, this is a potential opportunity, right? Growing up as a poor kid on the wrong side of the tracks, I didn't see those folks, right? My teachers didn't represent, I looked at them and they lived on the other side and we didn't like them. They were rich, right? We need students to be able to have mentors and role models and so forth. And finally, I've hit this one a couple of times, but we are the community's college. And that's an important distinction. It's not a community college. We are the community's college. We serve you. We serve us. It is our community. It is the students' college. All right. And so that is really the key point there. And so with that, I'd welcome any, I'm going to stop my share. Well, let me go to this. There we go. That one, I'd welcome any questions, comments.